agricultural output, productivity and income, especially of the smallholder farmers. Some of these resilience activities and livelihood activities that I talk about work into providing better irrigation in those areas that are frequently affected by droughts in order to make them more productive. Similarly, we focus on some pastoral activities with water wells and similar other things for the pastoralist communities. We provide together. I think what's important to mention here is also that only partnerships really help resolve the problems. Of course, as you know, the government of Ethiopia takes lead on all of these things and moves the country forward, and we as their international partners are trying to support, strengthen, complement them. But we also work as a team within our area of responsibility with other UN organizations and NGOs sometimes in order really to deliver comprehensive support. So our expertise is leveraging theirs in assisting, for example, agricultural communities in adequate seeds availability, quality as well as quantity. Similarly linked to that, extension services. Also I mentioned water wells and similar other things, but we also provide certain training and other aspects to minimize the losses. You're probably aware that food losses are one of the big problems of food insecurity. The people produce food and then cannot pass it to the markets in time to get the maximum output from it, and sometimes quantities of food are lost, sometimes up to 30%. So these are all the different ways we're trying. We're also trying to help link farmers to the markets or strengthen the markets so they function properly. So all of those activities are aimed exactly towards what you asked, which is agricultural productivity and better incomes, and especially for smallholder farmers. In respect to the and maybe to add, our programs also work on ensuring that while there is adequate availability of the food, there is also accessibility of most vulnerable, poorest in communities to reach, there's adequate nutritious intake and food security, and that's where some of our programs step in with some additional assistance to those areas. Now, speaking of Amhara and your question regarding the operations, as I started answering my question in security, our job is to be there and deliver, but we have to do that in a reasonably safe environment and minimizing our risks. We don't plan to stop. We don't plan to pause. We don't plan to, but our deliveries have to be temporarily on hold if there's fighting across the area where we are supposed to pass or where we are supposed to do the distribution. And sometimes it takes us more time to prepare certain deliveries and movements of our colleagues in those areas in order to ensure that we do it in the right way and that we still reach our targets. Now, how things will develop in the future, whether there might be suspensions, I cannot predict that. I can only say that, like now, when we do have certain increased levels of fighting in certain areas and therefore increased security risks, we're still being able to pass with delays, sometimes with postponement of our deliveries, because we can't just keep sending convoys without knowing what is the situation on the security of the ground. So we haven't stopped, we haven't paused, but yes, some of the deliveries, if there is fighting between Bonar and Matema, for example, might not reach on the given date or anywhere else, and sometimes deliveries happen everywhere. But I would remind us, again, we are reaching our targets over 90% so far. This year, we have assisted 7 million people last 2 months in the average of 3.5 to 4 million. So we are still doing a lot. And the funding has been so far the main constraint that we can't even do more. Because as I said, when you have 10 million people in need and we are collectively with other stakeholders and partners assisting up to 4, 5, 6 or maximum 7 million, there are quite a big number of people who don't make the cut to get the assistance. And regarding the diversions, it is an issue that certainly hit us hard. And I think it's the whole humanitarian response hard at the time. And WFP has taken it very seriously. It has been doing different investigations in different parts of the country to understand what happened and why and how to prevent it. But I think what I would like to highlight here is that WFP immediately started looking in the way things were being done and then identifying all those risk areas where there is a potential for problems, diversions and so forth, and putting in place mechanisms to address them. And we call that assurance program, which is to assure us that our system is right and robust and has accountability measures. And WFP globally is rolling that system now out throughout the world. And through that system we have made sure that our assessments, our targeting, our distributions, our deliveries, our monitoring are all strengthened and reinforced in order to minimize those risks. And one of the important mechanisms is that our monitoring of distributions has been really boosted, so we know much better what's happening. I think it's important here also to kind of demystify, to remove the myth. When people receive food as assistance, and that's the only monetary value they have, they will use it also for other purposes. Some of them might decide to sell certain food they have in order to buy more or a different other food because they have families that they need to feed, or food that they prefer. So the sale of food happens. I think what's very important for us is to continue doing what we have been doing now under the assurance project, to monitor and to see, what is the quantity that's on sale, where it comes from. We now have mechanisms to really determine if we see a box or a bag on the market, where it's coming from, where it was distributed, in order to understand. And then we follow up with the authorities, but also with communities, to see what is best. Clearly, we are trying to shift from food assistance more to different cash or cash-based transfer modalities of assistance, where this is possible and where there is not a gap in food supply, and it's more the gap in access of people to food. And we could do more if we had more resources for that type of assistance. But the bottom line is that we took the diversions issue very seriously last year. When I came here and started understanding what's going on, I'm quite comfortable that our system is good and strong. And in fact, we keep learning, because every month we reassess it. Every incident is recorded, whether it's 50 kilograms that's been stolen in the warehouse, or it's a truck that's been offloaded by our groups, or maybe by a community in a certain area where we had problems with traffic accidents. We always take note of those, and we keep monitoring, keep sharing information, and keep learning from them in order to minimize these risks, because it's important to put the scale of a problem into perspective. In an area where there are hundreds of thousands of people, smaller quantity on the market should not be too concerning, because some people will always sell some of it. I was myself in that position 30 plus years ago in my own country, where my family received assistance, and I know that my mother always took some trade for something else. But the important thing is to minimize diversions. We're also very happy that our investigations so far have not found WFP's guilt in any diversion prior to our handover of food and distributions, which is great. And that means that we have even then not been really exposed too much. But obviously the problem was quite big at the time, and we found the ways of making sure that in the system we monitor what's going on with the food, who is being assisted, why, and all the targeting now is done really through local committees, through the community's involvement. So it's not somebody sitting and writing the lists and then distributions going on. There are validation and verification processes with our partners, with our staff, with the community, who then decides who are those most vulnerable among them that need the assistance. And as I said, we try to track different consignments. Well, not just try, we actually track them. to see where the food comes from if we see food on the markets.